So as we're waiting for everybody to join, because obviously, you know, Jiu-Jitsu is generally kind of laxed on people being on time anyway.
The culture, if you will.
Right. That's part of our culture of Jiu-Jitsu being a little bit laxed on time. If you guys want to basically throw it out in the group chat where you guys are hailing from, where you're coming from, where you're listening from, watching from, and I'll go through our formalities of running a podcast with sponsors, so you guys can throw out where you're from. I see my wife is in the chat. So
hi, Jess.
Hey, baby. But with that said, guys, thank you guys for joining us. Big sponsors to the podcast. We'll be doing our big thanks to the sponsors of the podcast. We'll be doing some giveaways towards the end of the podcast. So if you guys are listening right now, towards the end, after we're done with our little spiel, we'll be doing, we'll have you guys give you guys a chance to throw out some questions that we'll answer. We'll talk about on the podcast live, and we will be giving away a few things from Charlotte's Web, one of our sponsors who makes premier CBD products. You guys can check them out at charlottesweb.com. They gave us a new code. If you guys haven't listened in a while, it's Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off. We'll be giving away a couple of their products for you guys today, so stick around for that. And then also Epic Roll. Epic Roll is my buddy Matt. He runs the site, the website, the company there, Epic Roll. And again, they make everything from gis and rash guards to really cool shorts. I have all my Jiu-Jitsu gear, no-gi stuff made from him. I really like it. I think it's good quality. And he also makes some really cool t-shirts. Check him out at epicrollbjj.com. Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off. We'll have some free stuff from him as well. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, the link there, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And then from there, guys, if you want to get my daily email that I send out and get a couple free ebooks, jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you get on there, I will send you my daily email that I send out, which goes into everything from philosophical ramblings to stuff that I'm reading to tips for jiu-jitsu training. And with that said, guys, thank you for being here. We're going to go over a couple ideas today. There's something that just chewing on, and this was in some of my emails a while ago. Basically, one of the things a question that I get asked pretty often, especially when I'm doing, let's take a look here real quick. Where's it going?
Everybody's from?
Got Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Where we got?
We got
Mark from Massachusetts.
We got Huntsville, Alabama, Seattle. What else we got? We got a few more. Columbus, Ohio. Man,
from
Grove City, BJJ. Yep. Bristol, Tennessee. Man, we got all kinds of Spain. Just spotted you in Nicky Rod's 2018 ADCC trials video.
What's that?
David says watching from Spain. Just spotted. You and Nicky Rod's 2018. So I guess maybe you're in the background somewhere.
So yeah, I was I was competing that year. So in 2018, I was actually
killed it that year. It was incredible.
So he was in a weight class above me, and so I'm in a weight class behind him. So typically, I remember I would be getting off the mat, and then Nicky Rod was going on the mat.
Yeah.
And so
that's pretty cool, man.
You know, so you go back there. I have a few matches that you can watch if you want to. España, Land of the Rabbits.
That's pretty cool. Land of the Rabbits.
Yeah.
All right.
I remember when I went to Spain, I went to we went to Barcelona and then to Mallorca.
Barcelona.
Yeah, with the T. We went there, and I remember it was learning up about Spanish history, where it came from, whatever. And then they have all these all these cool holidays that are one of them that we were there for. They were celebrating pushing the Moors out. The Christians pushing the Muslims out of Spain in the 1400s.
That's
or something.
A holiday.
Yeah, it's a holiday, big holiday. And they had everybody was dressed up in paint and stuff like that. I remember being this would not fly in the United States.
Probably not.
This is I like it. I like it.
Well, yeah.
But again,
so
we'll be going into some Q&A towards the end. We'll have some giveaways for you guys towards the end.
Yes.
And then one of the things that I get asked a lot of times, and I'm sure many of you guys have opinions and ideas on this. Basically, I got asked over the years, kind of what are some ideas or something that you've gotten from jiu-jitsu that affected you off the mat, right? Because we know that we do jiu-jitsu, that we train, and that it affects us in certain ways, but we know that there is a lot of, especially if you've been doing it for a long time, there's a lot of carryover value that affect you off the mats as well. And so today is basically 5 life lessons from jiu-jitsu and how they carry over to the mat. And again, these are just ideas to chew on for you guys. And we'll spend probably about 5 minutes on each one. So it'll be around 25 minutes, and then we'll jump into the Q&A towards the end and give you guys a chance to join in and get some free stuff. So let's jump in. So we have the first one, which is basically learning to grind and getting consistent. So it's a really simple idea, right? I remember getting into wrestling and I remember getting into jiu-jitsu and with business and pretty much everything else, lifting weights. It's one of these things where we a lot of times try to overcomplicate the whole process, right? Mm-hmm. We try to like, you know, how, like, what's the secret hack to this? What's the secret trick to this? And a lot of times then when I remember talking to one of my mentors about this, not really jiu-jitsu related, this is more of a business thing. And we were talking about this where, you know, people will look at someone who's done something and, you know, we can sometimes look at them and like, oh my God, you're amazing. How did you do this? But then when you talk to them, they're like, they feel like they're tricking someone because like all I did was just do it consistently. Yeah. Right. There's really there's no special magic to it. Right. It comes from a consistency. And so you have to learn how to grind. I remember experiencing that in wrestling first, where I remember coming in as a, you know, fat, overweight teenager, wasn't really athletic and grinding for, you know, 3 years for a varsity spot. You know, and then afterwards, like being able to, oh, I got the varsity spot. And that year I had a really good wrestling season. It's like the payoff of like consistency, long-term consistency. And then I look at the business stuff, right? With the gym, I just posted a video today about this. I went into the full-time into jiu-jitsu 2010, full-time. I was making jack squat. I was flat broke, sleeping on that air mattress that deflated halfway through the night in my mom's bedroom that she'd converted to a storage area. And again, slow, little incremental, just constantly putting consistent effort forward. It's even like looking at the gym. I have that cool picture where there was one day back in like 2012 where I had, we had basically, I think probably like 40 students. And I remember, oh man, this is huge. We had 40 people on the mat. And then I sort of split screened it with when we had like 120.
Yeah. Is that like promotions?
Yeah, promotions. Yeah. And both of them were promotion ceremonies. But one of them was like, I could drum up 40 people. This one we had like 120. Yeah. And it's like, oh, wow. And again, it looks really cool. And but there was no magic to it. It was like, you just consistently friggin' grind it, push forward and do consistent effort. And again, I think that's so important because it's so, and we'll talk more about the same idea in a little bit. A lot of times, you know, we'll get into that specific idea later, but I think it's like, we all want it now, right now. We want it now. And we all do. I get it because humans, we're all inherently lazy. You know, humans just are, right?
I think so.
We don't have to call it lazy. We can say we're all looking for the path of least resistance, right?
100%. That's human nature.
That's human nature, right? Yeah. Which you can use to your advantage sometimes. But I think that it's like one of those things where if you learn from wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and I then took that all over towards the business end, even towards relationships, right? Like if you have a marriage or if you have a wife or husband, it ain't going to be easy all the time. You got to grind it out a little bit sometimes.
And you got to put work in.
You got to put work in.
Consistently put work in.
You have to. You know, it's like with Jess and us, we have days like we have a date night on Friday usually. We're traveling tomorrow, so we're not doing that. We'll have all week together. And then, you know, on Tuesdays, we have our horse riding day. Yeah. Like we have time together that's consistently in there because if you don't have that, if you're not putting in the work consistently, what do you think is going to happen to that relationship?
It's going to fail. Yeah. And I think, you have to, it needs effort. I think like relationships are funny because like at first there's like all this momentum essentially. And then like after a while, it's like, all right, all the newness runs out. It's like, so what keeps you coming back? What's the, you know, why do you want to keep doing this thing? And what interests you in it? And you got to, sometimes relationships can be a grind, right? You got to take the good with the bad. Cause sometimes you don't agree, you butt heads a little bit and you got to be able to work through it.
Right.
That's tough.
So it's a consistency thing.
I think so. Yeah.
So next one, number 2.
All right.
You got to be in control of your emotions. And so again, simple idea. We all know this, right? But we also know that like a lot of people are emotionally fragile. Like you think about that. Like, I mean, you think about people I was thinking about it this morning, right? Because I saw some people, like I was driving to the gym, I saw some people arguing like outside of their car. Like you guys are so emotionally fragile. Like you're arguing with a stranger because they cut you off in a car. I don't care. Like if you cut me, I don't care. I might give you the finger, but that's gonna be about it, right? Like whatever, you know. Or you know, it's like, or someone like you go out. I remember going out to bars. This was when I was younger, right? You would see people get upset because someone said something mean to them. Like I'm hanging out with my girlfriend. Or whatever. I don't care what you say about me. Like Chew, you're a bitch. I'll be a bitch. Whatever. You know, I'm gonna go keep doing this, right? Yep. But I think about like the times when I was younger. Because before I started training, I remember I used to have a really bad temper. I would just kind of like short fuse and fly off. I remember you would see it in different places. Sometimes I would get mad at things where like, it could be something as simple as like playing a video game with my buddies. and like someone would do something, I'd want to like throw stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember being angry at just different situations, and I couldn't deal with them very well when I was younger. And then I remember getting into jiu-jitsu and wrestling. I remember it was like, if you get angry, it gets worse. Right.
Yeah.
Because like all of a sudden you get angry, but all that does is lead you to make stupid choices because you're not being in a thoughtful, resourceful place. Right. You start, all of a sudden you get angry, you see red, bodies don't start dropping, but instead you just start making mistakes and you get caught in triangle chokes. For me, it's like what would happen. I would get really frustrated with someone's guard or something. And then I'm like, "Urgh." And so I would try to drive through it. And then I would just get caught in more submissions because you're making mistakes. And then so you realize like, man, you got to chill. And I remember like, and also too, you know, the other issue is you might risk injuring someone, which that's not good.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants that. So it was a valuable lesson for me being younger. Now, where that's sort of passed off the mat is there's been plenty of situations, and I'm sure if you've got any good stories where people have done things, people in things where like my old self would have basically flew off the handle, and I've been able to like catch myself because it's almost like being on the mat. I get used to that feeling. And there's a quote from Seneca, right, that says like the man that prepares for, it's basically the man that prepares for like something won't be taken by. I gotta find the quote.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up because it's in my little quote deck here.
Quote deck.
Yeah, but basically when you prepare for the feelings, and you get they don't surprise you. You're ready for them.
Right.
And so in that situation, I remember there was this one time this guy comes up to the gym. This is years ago, and his daughter had come in hours before. And, you know, I was like, hey, how did you like class? She's like, oh, it was great. I really like it. I was like, do you want to start training? Yeah, sign me up. Okay, cool. So I signed her up. It's like for 3 months, right? Signed her for like a 3-month agreement, right? Because that's kind of like what we do. Start off like 90 days. If you can't get, if you can't be dedicated to something for 90 days, just don't even do it, right? Why bother? So 90 days, cool. Well, a few hours later, this guy comes in. I'm done with classes. I'm there, right? And all of a sudden he's like, I want to speak to the owner or whatever. I'm like, well, you're speaking to him. And he started to go on about how we're a bunch of crooks, just and yelling. And I remember I could feel that feeling coming up in my chest. And what I wanted to do was grab this dude by the neck and slam his face into the ground, right? I'm sitting there looking at him like, breathe. You know, in my head, I'm thinking like, just chill, man, just chill. Don't get angry because then he has control of you. Because then you start making mistakes and you start doing stupid stuff. Right. Just like on the mats, right? I took a breath and was like, you know, and then I calmed him down because I was like, you know, basically talked to him in a very stern manner, right? And then he wasn't giving that same energy back. And it ended up working out fine. His daughter trained there for a little bit, but basically I just tore up the contract. I was like, here, don't worry about it, man. She doesn't need to train here. He's like, no. I was like, well, no. I was like, it's fine. They came back later on, like I think it was a couple days later, and ended up, you know, coming back to train. But again, I think that a lot of times, you know, for a lot of us, if we don't have practice with it, and I think that's one of the things that jiu-jitsu and grappling can do is like we're dealing with a lot of emotions on the mat sometimes. You know, if you go to a competition, there's fear, anxiety, things like that. When you are on the mat, sometimes you can get frustrated, you get angry. You have these emotions going on, and you've got to learn how to control them so they don't get the better of you, right? For instance, if you go to a competition and you're anxious or nervous, you got to control that stuff so it doesn't get in the way of you performing at your best. If you're getting frustrated, you can't let that get to you because then you're not going to perform at your best. Right. So,
and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations on a consistent basis. I mean, that's really what you're doing. I mean, in jiu-jitsu, we're constantly uncomfortable. You're constantly pushing yourself. And then, you know, the thing, you know, we get questions about competition, right? Well, you got to get the reps in. If you're competing, if you're training, you know, all that kind of stuff, you have to get the reps in. I think you get more comfortable and you're used to, you go, oh, I've been here before. I've dealt with this before. And that's kind of, you know, I think like with jiu-jitsu, it's a lot of reps. And that's why, you know, just dealing with this stuff over and over kind of makes some of the other stuff just meaningless. Doesn't make it as really profound. And almost kind of like in a good way, kind of numbs you to some of the, you know, the negative emotions you can deal with because we deal with them all the time.
That's right. The quote from Seneca is the man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. So like, that's like, to me, I think about that. I've talked about this in some of the videos.
Smart
like
fellow, that guy.
Yeah. Right. You, it's like when you know something's coming, you put up guards. Like in your mind, like you get ready for them, right? You put up the guards. So you're like, you're not going to, it's like when the idea or the emotion comes to into your brain, you don't let it take root. You know, you basically know we're not dealing with this, right? So, you know, from training for a long time, it's like I've found that, like, again, you get really good at noticing those emotions, those feelings coming up, whether it be anxiety, nervousness, fear, anxiety, anger, whatever it is, and you can learn how to control them, at least not let it take over.
Yeah.
Right. And you have that experience with it on the mat, so that this way, and again, the mat really doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal, right? What we do there. But then what that's really useful for is like, okay, you've got a job interview and you're anxious. You can be really nervous. Oh man, I don't want to lose this job. It's just like at the competition.
Yep.
I won the competition, even though I was nervous. I'll knock this one out the park. Or you get angry, about something. You're like, well, what happened when I got angry in the mat? I got choked out by the dude. Let me not get angry in the situation. It's not going to lead to anywhere good. Right? Simple idea.
Yep. And you get, and it's kind of like you have feedback kind of right away. You know what I mean? It's like you get that feedback, like you did something, it didn't work out for you. Oh, well, slap hands, start over. Yep. And you get to kind of learn from that, like almost instant chance to like redeem yourself.
Right. Which leads us into number 3, which is understanding what failure really is. Right. So I'm not one of those people that's like, failure's not like, it's you don't fail, you learn or whatever. It's a failure. You lost and it stings. But I think I was trying to think about, why is it that we have such an aversion to it when we're younger? And then if you start doing things like, for instance, in jiu-jitsu, we fail all the time. So get you're used to it. And even like me, my business partner with business, and me and you with business, right? When we're trying stuff, it's like there's going to be lots of failures and you don't really get too attached to them. You're like, you're playing around. I'm like, why is that? And I imagine it's because like what happens when you're young? Like, for instance, as a kid, I remember like, what happens if you failed a test? It wasn't good, right? Like you come home, your parents are going to be pissed.
Drastic.
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? Yours comes in with all the red ink and everything else like that. So you get conditioned from a young age to want to avoid failure at any cost.
Sure.
You'll cheat on tests. You'll do anything you can so that you don't have failure, right? Whereas as you get older, you're like, well, hopefully you learn this lesson, right? The more as we get older and we get into stuff, it's like, no, let's find the failures. Like, it's okay. It's fine. If they happen, they happen. I mean, I'm not going to enjoy them. It's going to be better when I have a success. But again, I'm okay with them, because what is a failure? It's feedback. It's telling you what you did wrong. And this is like a lot of people, like one of the things that a lot of people, you can make your jiu-jitsu a lot better if you do this, is if you get on the mat. Sometimes I ask my students at the end of class, I'm like, hey guys, do anybody have any questions? And most people don't have an answer. I don't have any questions. Everything's fine. I remember when I was younger, me and my buddy, when we would go to jiu-jitsu, we lived together at the time. And when we would drive home, we would literally talk to each other. Hey, what happened tonight? And we would debrief each other on like our roles. And by the end of it, we each had something to work on when we went back, right? We talked about like, how, man, I got screwed up by this guy. This guy messed me up. I think I can try this next time. When you roll, this is what a lot of times what separates like the better guys. If you go through the roll and you're not really thinking about it, you have no intention with the rolling, you're not focused on any particular technique. And when you're getting hit with stuff, you're not even thinking about what's happening. You're just like, I'm here. That's okay. It's good exercise. But if you're trying to get better, you really have to like tune into those things that are happening, tune into those failures, because again, that's how you're going to improve. And so just a short little tip there.
I would say, for me, I was just kind of writing some down. Failure is like one of the best opportunities for growth. It's like, because it stings and it hurts, it just, it's going to be one of those things where you can let it kind of beat you down, or you can like, oh, I know not to do that thing. If
you look at it right, right. So again, if you actually look at it, you're correct. Again, it sounds cliche, right? Like you're understand it's good for growth, but it is.
It really is. I think, is that what it sounds?
No. It just sounds like one of those
it
just sounds like one of those like cheesy motivational quotes.
I hate it.
But
it's
true.
I hate failing. I have this aversion to failure, but man,
you get all pissed off.
I know how much better I am. Like if I get, and it's like almost like I used to get really bummed out about failing, and now
I remember,
and I get bummed out a little bit, and then I get kind of like, all right, well, no, that's not going to happen.
Well, I remember Eugene, for instance, we went to this tournament. He lost. He bombed.
It was the tournament.
It was the tournament.
It was the tournament at the gym. This guy.
That wasn't the one I was thinking when we went to Indianapolis. Remember when we went there and then you went and competed like the next weekend because you lost?
It was the one. It was the one at our gym.
Okay.
That I got just manhandled.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh, this sucks.
Then you had to go compete like the next week.
I competed the next weekend.
And then you did better.
I did a lot better.
Yeah.
I took some legs home.
That's right. So again, it's a simple idea, guys. I mean, this is not crazy stuff, but like this is important because like, for instance, with the business stuff, when we get into that, like when you try something, some stuff's going to work, some stuff's not going to work.
Yeah.
We've done different stuff with the gym. We've changed prices. We've changed membership stuff. We've, changed around class times. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't work. And you can't be attached to any of it, right? It's like you do what you think you can do to improve things, and you just got to let it ride.
Oh.
You just have to be willing to like listen to it. Because I remember, like, for me, this one was really hard because when I was younger, I was very insecure. You don't have a good sense of myself.
Sure.
And I remember, like, I couldn't learn from all the failures. I remember, here's a great example of me having trouble with this. I was a purple belt, or as a white belt. I would get my matches back. My coach would get them. He would record them, and he would record. He would make copies of VHS tapes. This is how.
What is VHS? Video something?
Video home system. I don't know.
I might be right.
I don't know. But VHS tapes.
Yeah.
For any of you guys that are old enough. And so I would watch them, and like I remember my first tournament, I had like I think 6 wins and I had 2 losses, and I would continuously watch my wins. I wouldn't watch my losses, which is like I just liked watching because I was like, look how cool I am. But then on my losses, like that was where I could have gotten better, but I couldn't, you know. And again, it's one of those things where if you can get rid of the sting from it, appreciate the sting for what it is, right? But control your emotions enough to not take it too personally, so that you can actually learn from it.
Yep, I hear you.
All right, here's another one. This one's good for all of you, like people in January that are trying to knock out resolutions, lose weight, get into working out, whatever it might be. This is like one of the ones I go by. So a lot of people, I get messages about this all the time. People say, oh man, I'm tired. I'm not motivated. Whatever, you know, the normal stuff, right? So my thing is you got to find actually, I'm jumping ahead.
No, you're good.
We'll do that one first. So you've got to find the after feeling focus. You got to focus on the after feeling. This is what I call it.
Okay.
So you got to focus on, I'm jumping ahead. So I'm switching them. So focusing on the after feeling. The after feeling is when you think about it. Most of you guys would probably agree with me that you do not, that you regret not going to work out, that you regret not eating the right foods, that you regret not doing the things that you know that you need to do to become a better version of yourself, right? We all have. But then you know that man, I really feel good. I feel great when I get done working out. I feel good when I eat the right foods. I feel good when I, spend time with my wife or whatever it is, right? All the stuff that you know you need to do in order to become the person you want to be, right? So what I do, and this is something like, again, take this for what you will. Whenever I have those sluggish days, because we all get them, I get really focused on the after feeling. Like I know how I'm going to feel after this is over.
Yeah.
And so I don't even care about how I feel right now. And if you want a little trick, this is something I do for my morning workouts. If I'm going to lift in the morning, I don't allow myself to have coffee or caffeine until after my workout's done. That's like that. You kind of anchor your caffeine, like little, the dump of positive feeling with your post-workout feeling, which is pretty good. Whatever. But the idea is that, again, a lot of times we have those feelings, but again, if you can get focused on the after feeling and you can get really tuned into how good it's going to feel when you do it, then it's not that big of a deal, right? It's like you're going to endure some discomfort for a minute, but then when you're done with it, you're like, man, I'm going to feel great.
Yeah.
Even like sometimes with like work, like there's sometimes where I'm like, man, I'm just dragging, and I don't want to do write the marketing campaigns, or I don't want to do whatever it might be, but I'm like, I'm going to feel good when I get done doing it because I'm going to feel accomplished. And I know all of us have that stuff. And so you can get focused on the after feeling. And again, for me, this came from jiu-jitsu where, I'd be in a jiu-jitsu class and after you're done, you feel amazing, right?
Yeah.
You have your buddies there. You have that feeling of almost that post-workout euphoria.
Yep.
And it's a great feeling. And so there would be days where, again, I'd be dragging ass and I would go train and I'd feel great afterwards. And so you start noticing that trend. I'm like, oh, so like when I do the things that I know I need to do, I feel better afterwards. So therefore, I really shouldn't put too much stock into how I feel right now.
Yeah.
So
anyway, so I think like no one's ever really like regretted not going to the gym. No one's ever like been like, man, I wish I didn't work out today, or I wish I didn't go to the gym and have some fun rolls with my training partners, or because you always feel better.
Yeah.
We have those like there's a story, one of my favorite stories. We had these kind of fun Saturday morning classes with the older crew. Now a bunch of these guys are in their late 40s, early 50s. So the older crew that we had, and some of those guys have moved on to other gyms too, that moved and things like that. But those were some of the best. Man, we would have some battles, and then afterwards it was just like we were just laughing and cutting it up, and it was like the whole weekend ahead of you. It was just a really good experience. So I really love that. It's just fun. You never regret it. Like I've never been like, man, I wish I didn't lift today. I wish I didn't go do jiu-jitsu today. Like, because I always feel better afterwards.
Right. I mean, so if you tune into that feeling, then like you don't care about how you're going to feel right now. You know, it's like being hungry, then you're looking at a big steak. Yeah, you're hungry right now, but as soon as you eat that steak, it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, go train. That's your steak.
Yep.
You know, and by the way, as a side tangent to you guys, if you have a great group of people training with you, I just want you to take a moment to be grateful for that, because it's one of the things, like, you may not think about this. This is something I think about because I've been training for, 24 years in jiu-jitsu, right? Or 20 years in jiu-jitsu, grappling 24 since high school, right? There will be these almost eras of time, right? Where like you might have this really killer group of people together for like anywhere from 2 to like maybe 4 or 5 years, 5 years if you're lucky. And then like people move, they change, they get married, they have kids, things just happen, right? Jobs change, and then you lose them. And so it's like, you look back and there's those moments. And me and one of my black belts, we were talking about this, Nate. We had this period of like our morning classes. It was just, I mean, every day you're coming in, you're training hard. You got a bunch of meatheads beating the crap out of each other, and we're like belly laughing half the time because everybody's doing silly stuff. And it was a beautiful moment. And it's one of those things where like, if you've got a good group, you should just take a step back and be like, man, this is awesome. Because again, it's not going to be there forever. And I've talked about this before. Everybody gets to the point where they've got like, your rolling's done. We all just get old, and our bucket of bones just kind of wears out on us. So again,
respond as well.
That's it. Appreciate those moments while you got them. On a brighter note, we'll kind of move on. The last one, guys, and this is a real quick, a simple one. I talked about this in the video today that I posted on the channel about how to make a living doing jiu-jitsu. You've got to find an intrinsic motivation for you. So to kind of talk about it, like I talked about it in the video, where when I went full time in this stuff, there was nobody doing what I was doing really that I could really look to. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of people that were doing jiu-jitsu full time that I could really look to in my area anyway, that I could be like, yeah, they've got it all figured out. Right. And, you know, at the time, YouTube wasn't really even like, it was just really starting to get some traction because YouTube came out like 2006. And then, you know, it started to kind of get bigger. So a lot of the things weren't going on back then. So there wasn't a clear path for all these things, but I knew what I wanted to do. Right? I was like, I want to do this. And again, I was willing to endure a lot of stuff. I remember first off, I was making, at the time when I first started doing it, I was making about $1,000 a month. Yeah. Which was rough. And then in order to make that low amount of money, I was living in my mom's. She had a bedroom that was like, became like her storage room as she was doing stuff around the house. And I threw an air mattress in there, and the air mattress had a hole in it. So it would deflate halfway through the night. So I had to, whatever. And so again, I lived like that, and I'm around people that are, especially my age, that were buying stuff. They're in their mid-20s. They've got a decent job now, or they're just getting out of college. They've got a decent job, and they're buying stuff. They have things, and society tells them that they are successful, and I am a failure. It sucked. It sucked in a way, but I was happy with what I was doing, and I felt like I was on my path, and I was chasing what I deeply, deeply wanted. But again, it's like I had to have that conviction. And so I share this with you guys, where find something that you actually want. And that's tough. That's not an easy thing to come to, an easy solution to come to. Like, I think a lot of people, they get into online spaces and they just see people doing shit on social media, and they like point, FOMO, I want that. Look what he's got. I want that. Right. And I mean, and a lot of marketers play on that, right? They'll have their Ferraris around their rented houses. Like, look at what I've got. Right. Like, and they make you think that you should want that. Right. But you should find something that you deeply want, that you can chase after with conviction, no matter what happens. It's like the Nietzsche quote, right? If you know your why, you can endure any how, right? So you got to chase after it. And so again, I say that because I think a lot of times we can very easily, this happens to everybody, myself included, you can be diverted off your path by the societal images that you're seeing, that you're shown, that say you should want this, you should want that. But then you got to like, oh, I don't want that. Like, I've done this several times where I almost buy like a really nice car. Yeah. But then I'm like, whoa, I don't even like cars that much. Why do I want one? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't really want a really expensive car. I don't really value them. It's not, I want a truck so I can work around the property. Yeah. But like, that's what I'm waiting for, is to find a good truck. But I don't want a car. Like, why do I want one? I don't need a sports car. I think they're neat, but I don't give a shit about them. Yeah. And so again, this is something with jiu-jitsu that was useful to me, because again, I had this deep intrinsic drive to want to do jiu-jitsu. I loved doing it. And then when I got into the business stuff, I loved just trying to do this thing. And it was this beautiful thing that, you know, then when it came to stuff off the mat, I was more secure in being willing to stay on my own path.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of times we feel like we get pulled one way or the other, or people sometimes want to pull us one way or the other. And then you have to be willing to like say, I don't want to do that. I have this direction that I want to go to. And so I guess it's maybe helped me tune into being a bit more intuitive with what I want.
Yeah.
And then chasing that direction. And that's like something that was very useful to me off the mat, because it's allowed me and my wife to create a life that we want versus the life that we should be told we want. And that was like, for instance, there was one point where me and my wife, we downsized from a house to an apartment. We did it because we're like, let's get rid of all of our debt and let's get in a place where we can basically just pay off everything. Just, we can be debt free completely. Right. And then we'll push on. Right.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have a lot, but it was a way for us to focus on the business and then also to get rid of the debt. We did it. But I remember like she felt so uncomfortable about doing it. And I remember talking to her like, why? You know, and you're like, because it's not what we're supposed to do, right?
It's like you're going backwards almost.
You feel like, but what is backwards? You know, it's like we're making
exactly what is bad.
We're making a decision. Now we have a life that we have literally, like, her and I sat down years ago and said, how do we want to live? And it basically, we had it down to the wire. We had land, we had a property. She worked from home part-time.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we do now. And so it's like, well, if you start to get clear on these things of what you actually want, that of an intrinsic motivation, you'll grind your butt off, going back to the grind part. And it's easy to be consistent because you actually want it.
Right. Yeah. It's what interests you. It's what drives you. It's what, it's like what you're passionate about.
That's right.
And having the chance to like, okay, I'm going to take a small step back so that I have a stable foundation to really push when the opportunity comes. I can really jump towards it and put everything in. I don't feel like I've got all these things pulling at me where I can't really take my full effort, put my full effort into it. So, and I think like, jiu-jitsu, like if, you were talking about that, I think the video is about how to like, make your career out of jiu-jitsu or how to make a, live off of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And I think like you got to sacrifice a lot. You might have to go through some discomfort. You have to go through discomfort. But like, do you love training every day? Is that what you want to be doing? Is that how you want to spend your time? Right.
Well, also too, let's be honest. If my buddy, my business partner, Joe, I think he's in here. He would tell you, if you want to make your living doing something, you're not actually going to be doing the thing that you're thinking. Like, for instance, for instance, there's like, some competitors that they make their living doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
For most of us, like there's a whole business side of things that like, you don't just like most people, oh, they think I just train. Oh, nope. It would be so easy if that's all he did. There's so much that like, that all of us do with what we're doing that like nobody sees, which is fine, But again, I think it's easy to do those things if you have a drive, if you have something that actually motivates you internally.
Yes.
I think that a lot of people end up chasing goals that aren't theirs. They just chase them because they think they should want them.
They're told to.
They're told to, or they're put in images and they're influenced to, right? Influencers will influence them to want to chase that, even though it's like, you don't even want that.
Even your family, like,
sure.
For me being an immigrant coming to this country, a lot of it was like, hey, you should be this thing. You should do this thing. You should be this type of, you become this doctor or this, that. You should be, my parents really wanted me to be a dentist. Man. I don't want to stare at people's mouth all day. That sounds, dentists, I think, have like one of the highest like suicide rates or something.
I've heard that.
I have too. Maybe it's not true, but it sounds like a miserable job. Sometimes my posture would hurt.
One of you guys are here.
If you're a dentist, sorry.
One of you guys here. If you would let me, would you guys look it up? Is dentistry? Is that one of the professions with the highest suicide rates? We'll find out.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're gonna do some Q&As that we're gonna look at. We're waiting on this.
We will do some Q&A with you guys. So,
all right.
We've been yapping for about 30 minutes, and we will do some Q&A with you guys. And
should we pull your stuff up? I'm gonna start going through some. So we'll do. We'll find a couple questions. We'll do a couple giveaways. We'll do that. All right.
We've got some stuff from Charlotte's Web. We've got some stuff from Epic Roll, and then I'll give some stuff away as well.
I'll do a product as well. I have like a couple courses on like injuries and stuff. If you can, on Instagram, just find the Chewjitsu Podcast on Instagram, And what I want you guys to do is, if you win, just send me a message on there, and I will get your address and your size if you win something, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
So that way we can get you set up, if that works. Chewy, are you looking through it right now?
I'm looking through it right now.
Somebody said Zero Sharp White Belt said they did. I think they did street clothes rolling at the New Year.
Oh yeah,
because of kind of what we've done. So
oh really? That's cool.
So this one is let's see this one. This is, I think, probably.
Oh, cool. Trevor Prangley. Yeah, I remember Trevor Prangley. He was
a MMA fighter.
Yeah. Like, he was an MMA fighter.
What about Trevor Prangley?
Well, that's because he said that shout out to Trevor Prangley's AKA.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's at the
gym.
gym.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's one from you want to do this one?
Let's do it.
It's from Steve Torres. I'll read it. Question for Eugene or Chewy too. We'll answer both. Haven't trained in about 2 years. Any suggestions on how to avoid getting injured on my first class back? Chewy, you want to start? You go for it.
Sure. So, right. I mean, man, like, think about it like lifting weights. So, like, if, for instance, if for a reason, this hasn't happened too many times because I've been pretty consistent, but it's happened a couple times when I lift weights where, like, I get off the plan for like maybe a couple months or something, not a couple years, but a couple months, which is enough for lifting weights where it can be pretty rough. When I come back, I start really light with the weights. I'm not really worried about moving heavy weight. I'm not going to try to push it with my ego. I'm just going to, like, move through the motions because I don't want to be broken and I don't want to be too damn sore the next day. With jiu-jitsu, I've had layoffs, not ever 2 years, but I've had like weeks, like maybe a couple months at times due to injuries and stuff like that. Same thing. When I come back, I try to take everything as light as possible. No ego. I'm not trying to be the person that I was before I left. I'm someone that's different at this point, right? I may not feel any different mentally. We always feel like we're the same person essentially, right, but we're always changing. And I come back and I'm very light about it. So, I mean, it's really simple. You go into your class, you do what you can, and you take lots of, like, I wouldn't even roll for your first class. If you've been off for 2 years, I would roll either with someone that's comfortable or that's pretty relatively chill, or I would at least take a lot of rest rounds. So I wouldn't feel any obligation to do every round. And again, when I come back from injuries and stuff like that, I don't roll every round. I know there's sometimes this kind of like macho idea about no rest rounds, roll every round. There's a time for that when you need like mental toughness. If you're just coming back from an injury, you'd be better off by being a little bit more relaxed, going in and having some rounds, take a round in, a round out, round in, round out, that kind of idea, which will serve you a lot better to, get yourself back up to speed without doing too much excessive wear and tear or getting you down like super exhausted to the point where you are at risk of injury.
So I'll answer this from a little bit of a different perspective, like kind of a
PT perspective.
Yeah, like a physical perspective or even a mental. I think like Chewy had a good point talking about your brain's going to think that you're the same person. You can do this stuff or a certain thing, but your body's going to be kind of behind. So I think you have to focus on just kind of, first of all, getting comfortable with getting in the positions. So some ways to do that is just maybe do some solo drills just by yourself. Just make sure you're comfortable sitting on your heels in a deep squat, make sure you're comfortable in a lunge position.
Well, here's a question.
Some solo drills and movements.
Here's a question. So, okay, you're a physical therapist at this point. You broke your arm.
I did.
So what'd you break?
My radius. So it's one of the forearm bones here.
So Eugene broke his forearm bone. He was rolling and he got caught. He was kind of going slow and the guy like threw him in a hard collar drag.
I'll explain what I did. It was a buddy of mine that we've been training for years. We started as white belts, and he was very inconsistent. And I was just doing whatever I wanted. So I was playing around. He was sitting on his butt, and I let him get my collar, and he just collar dragged me to the ground. And of course, you're not supposed to plant your hand, but instinctively, sometimes you'll do that, and that's what I did.
And it sounded like a gunshot went off.
Yep.
And so, he broke his radius. And so you were off the mats for a while.
I was.
So what did you do when you came back? Because again, at this point, you were a physical therapist. You had the knowledge. So what did you do when you came back?
So before I came back, I wanted to make sure that I could at least, my arm was functioning properly. I had good range of motion. I had decent strength, but I trained one-handed a little bit, actually quite a bit. Just to start, I felt like I was still not quite ready to really go. And so I trained, I put my hand in my belt and I did that. But then I just kind of was, I modified positions, whether you want to, talk to your training partners and let them, mind you, I was a purple belt at the time. I had a little bit of experience. I could kind of dictate where the role would go with some people. Again, it's just one of those things, like, you have to be mindful. Like, I think, like you talked about, one idea is not going too hard too fast, but limiting the variables of when you return, meaning I may just do drills just to see how my body feels. I may do just positional rolling with people I trust. I may start 1 round on, 2 rounds off, and then increase that gradually every kind of week or two, and just kind of go from there. I think that's really, you have to listen to your body too. I think there's no really like one way to do it. If you're not dealing with any injuries, I would work on your mobility, work on your strength, do things to kind of ease your, the ramp on process.
So again, first time coming back, man, I think you have an idea. You just need to take it easy. But you got some ideas to chew on as well.
So let's do, Steve, we will do a rash guard from Epic Roll. We just need you to send me a message on Instagram at Chewjitsu Podcast, or you can send us an email at thechewjitsupodcast@gmail.com and tell us your size, and then we'll have Matt from Epic Roll hook you up. He's awesome.
And then here's another one from Zero Stripe White Belt. It's a little bit further down.
Okay, I'll find it.
The question is, can you explain how important it is to have playful rolls, exploring new positions without having a war? 60% or so deliberately trying new or odd techniques to find hidden nuggets. So this is a thing, right? If you think about, like, there's been studies on how like the sort of the optimal mindset for us to learn, right? And what the study suggests is that we learn in this kind of Goldilocks place in our mind, right? If you're not really like excited or aroused, right, then you're not going to be as into it, right? You can think about if you're just very lethargic and you're just like, I don't really care what's going on. The other side of it is that if you get too hyped up, you'll end up basically having sort of what you would call like a brain fart. So you go to a competition. How many times, many of you guys have probably experienced this. You're either in a really hard roll or you're in a competition and like something's right there in front of you and you can't recall the information to execute the movement. I've had several students where they're just so like ramped up in the match, even though the person's arm is literally dangling out in front of them to armbar. And they're like, I'm like screaming armbar, and they just don't pull the trigger. Right. So we learn in that space, right? And the thing is that learning and like competition, those are two different things. If we're trying to explore things and trying to learn new things, we're not going to do that at 100%, right? This is like something where if you're trying to learn new stuff, you've got to like tone it down a little bit. You're not trying to have, like, as you said, you don't want to have the war. You don't want to have the competitive match. You want to basically tone it down. So something that I do a lot, and this is a way to kind of help facilitate that, is lots of situational rolling. Right. So basically, let's say if you're trying to work on a position or a new technique or whatever, putting yourself in that position and limiting the roll to that. So this way you can just kind of play around and figure things out. And you don't have to worry about like, what if this fails? And then all of a sudden I'm on the bottom of the person getting smashed for the next 6 minutes. You can just play around a little bit. And so that's really what I do. And then, like, let's say, for instance, when we were working on leg locks several years ago in the gym, probably back in 2014, 2015, when we started playing legs on some real degree every week with our Friday Foot Locker classes, I would put the students in the leg entanglement positions and I would give them certain situations. Like sometimes I would say, okay, you're going to hold, and then the other person's going to try to escape, and then this person's going to submit, and this person's going to try to escape, whatever it might be. But I'm going to start them in the position. And again, we know that there's submissions that are going to happen, but the whole focus was not to win, but to figure things out a bit and to play around in those positions. And so again, it's really important. And there's ways to facilitate that as a coach. But even you as a individual practitioner, if you don't have control of your training, then it's useful to go into those roles that you have sometimes with that intention of saying, okay, I'm not trying to win this thing. I'm trying to get better with my jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to improve with a particular technique. And so you try to get to those positions and you try to work on something specific. But again, the goal is not the win, it's the improvement of a technique. And yeah, that's the idea. So
yeah, so like, I think flow rolling is something that, it's play. By playing, we kind of start to experiment a little bit, and you may find something that works too.
When you say flow rolling, are you talking about like where you have no resistance? Or are you talking about like because what I'm talking about,
so you're talking about like kind of actually
Yeah.
Just not going 100%.
Not going 100%. Because flow rolling's like play. Like we're just
that's what I read with that. But maybe
because like flow rolling's like you're basically warming up. That's what I use flow rolling for, right? But like I think he's about 60%. So you're thinking 60 to 70%. You're talking about like a comfortable pace where like you're really not going that hard. And this is something like my student Brandon, if you guys follow him on Instagram, Brandon Reed, I mean, a terrific wrestler, good competitor in jiu-jitsu, right? You're going to see more of him in the future, I'm sure. A lot of his roles, like when we're working on new positions together, they're very playful.
I see.
Like he's not going like 100% because when that friggin' big bastard goes 100%, it's like, it's tough. It's like because he's like, I feel like I'm rolling with like a friggin' linebacker, like he's a really athletic young guy. And he starts scrambling and he wears my old butt out. But when we are working on certain positions, we play a lot. And so we'll play a lot of positional rolling. So this way, again, we're limiting the options of where we're going to go. And we just stay in that little spot. And I think it's very useful.
I do want to say like those lighter rolls. I mean, like if you really go 100%, I mean, it's going to wear your body out. It's going to break your body down too. So
and you're not going to learn then.
Yeah. And you're not, because you're basically just you're basically doing a tournament style roll at that point. It's really playing your A game and trying to finish the roll.
Right.
So I think that allows you to maybe explore a little bit more and find yourself in some positions. And also if you both realize that the roll is about 60%, if you get caught, it's not that big a deal because you both weren't going hard.
Right. Exactly. And this is the thing. This is like me and Brandon talk about this a lot. Practice isn't a competition. Right. So if we're training, we are in a practice. We're trying to practice. We're trying to get better with something. It's not a competition. If you take every round that you have in the gym and you take it personally, you're going to screw your practice. Right. When we're practicing, we're trying to play around things. We're trying to get better. And you don't get better if all you do is do the same stuff over and over again because you're trying to win every roll. I tried to do it when I was younger. And like one of the best things I ever got was learning how to turn down the intensity so that I could learn to play with positions a little bit more. That might means that I failed from time to time. Might have meant that I got submitted, but I got better from it. What are we going to send them, Eugene?
Pair of shorts. So 0 stripe white belt. So I just realized some people do not have Instagram. So send us an email at thechujitsupodcast@gmail.com. And I'll put that in the comments. And we will send you something. We need the size. Matt's going to give you a little mystery pair of shorts.
Yeah.
So, Chew, you got anything else? You got any? Real quick, Radoslav. Let me write this.
Radoslav.
He said he gave us the suicide rate. This is some morbid podcast.
Okay.
Going on.
What's the suicide rate?
Let me see. He said that major occupations groups with the highest suicide rate included construction or extraction. So males were higher than females. Farming, fishing, and forestry, including agriculture workers, males were.
It's always males.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that's.
I wonder if those numbers, like those suicide rates.
And I don't know where those are from.
No, of course. But like, I mean, obviously we know that like suicide rates are higher amongst males. And I wonder if those were true back in like the day, or if it's more of a modern, if it's a modern thing, because again, there's a lot of men that feel like they lose purpose in life. Right. And so that, they, why be here? Right. So,
yeah, it's really, and I mean, obviously working constructions in terribly harsh environment, hard hours, all that stuff. It's pretty terrible. Let me see.
You pick one.
I'll see if I can find one.
So I see I'm not going to do one right this because I've done a video on this, but a lot of you guys are like asking about rolling dummies. I don't like dummies. I don't like them. I think they're a waste of time, and I'll tell you why. I have a video about this, by the way. I have had several of my friends and me and my buddies had a rolling dummy back in the day.
I made one.
You made one
with PVC pipe and made joints and everything.
That's right. So I've come across several of them, and you know how many times I've seen someone really put them to use, like for a long-term consistent basis for years? Zero. Now, I'm not saying that some of you guys won't. You may be wired for that, but like, again, jiu-jitsu for me, like let's imagine that let's throw it as theoretical here. If you could go down in your basement and roll with they had some sort of like robot that was like just like a human, but the human did not talk to you. It didn't like bullshit with you. It was the only thing it would do is you press a button and then all of a sudden it would go into like rolling mode and you could adjust the level and you could just roll with it. And it would give you, the rolling would feel just like it would technically feel with some of your partners. I don't think that the roll would be as enjoyable. I don't think that what we get from jiu-jitsu is simply just a training aspect, right? There's a lot of community from it. And even with my training partners, a lot of times having the feel of a real body is very important. You know, being able to, like, when I'm drilling a technique, for instance, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm trying to tune into the feeling of that movement. How does that feel? Does that feel good? Does it feel smooth? And once I feel like I'm doing it correctly, I'm trying to replicate that feeling over and over again. So with that, the grappling dummy that me and my buddies had when we used to live together, we had a mat room in the house. We called him Larry.
Okay.
And Larry ended up becoming essentially like a gag. So what we would do with Larry is we would dress him up and we would put him in different parts of the house to spook each other.
Dude,
so there was,
seems like the best use for a grappling dummy.
So there was one day where, like, I remember one of my buddies put him at the kitchen table, and so I walk in one day and I feel like I just saw the silhouette of this person sitting, scared me. And then one day I put it in the bathroom, and so someone went to go use it in the middle of the night, the bathroom, and they like screamed because they thought someone was in the bathroom. And then I remember my girlfriend at the time, she stayed over my house. I basically strapped Larry up against the door, and I closed the door. So this way, as soon as she opened up the door, Larry just fell on her. And she like sent me a text message later on because she was pissed at me. So again, that's what we use Larry for. But we barely did any drills with him. Again, you might drill with him for a little bit, but I don't know what the costs are. They used to be super expensive. For the price of it, I would say, like, man, you could get a private lesson with your coach. You could literally like buy a set of relatively cheap mats and just invite one of your battle buddies over to your house to get some drills in and practice. I think that would be a much better use of time, and basically than just doing a dummy. Because with the dummy, you could just go get like a heavy bag, and you could do most of the movement drills that you need, opposed to trying to do it like with a body or whatever. And again, I know they've got the new one, like the robot. It's like,
yeah, it makes sounds.
I mean, it's neat, but like, but it's that novelty is going to go away pretty darn quick, I imagine. And then like most home workout stuff, unless you have a dedicated space for it, it's going to collect dust. It's going to sit there and just be there.
I never used this thing. I had spent all this time, but I never use it. It's just not, there's nothing. I don't think it translates. You're better off doing like solo drills, or like you said, taking like a big heavy bag and just putting it down and doing some movements on that. All right, I'm going to pick so that was 0 stripe white belt we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
So shorts for them. I'm going to do this one. And Chewy, you may talk about this because this is not exactly the same, but you've had some knee injuries in the past coming back. So let's talk this from Brett. And Brett, we will do some Charlotte's Web for you. We'll do maybe like a balm or something like that.
One of the balms. Yeah.
We'll give you some of the muscle rub. So Brett asks, recent ACL tear during prehab and rehab, when clear to train technique, any recommendations on technique to work, grips, triangulations, etc. I'll start with saying one thing to avoid, and I think the last thing that you should work into your game is takedowns, because I think and this is not for everybody. If you're a wrestler and like, man, you know that like you standing up is kind of what you do best. I don't necessarily think that's the last place you should start. However, most jiu-jitsu athletes, standing, there's so many variables. A lot of people get injured on takedowns. They're not as experienced. I think that's the last thing you should probably integrate into your training. Yeah. But Chewy, you had some knee injuries in the past, some surgeries came back from. What do you got?
Yeah, I didn't have anything with like an ACL, but I had meniscus tears and meniscus surgeries. And so, you know, the way that it would start would be, I would be off from training for, you know, it would be around like 12 weeks. Right. And then I would kind of be on the mats drilling a little bit and, you know, practicing some moves and teaching and stuff like that. But I wasn't actually rolling. And then when I came back, what I did was I sort of put myself on a 12-week program to get back to normal. Right. So I had to write it out, because here's what most of the time happens with people is like they start off with good intentions of coming to the gym and being disciplined and not doing a bunch of stuff. Right, not rolling every round or whatever, and then you know what they do? They get excited.
You know, get a taste, baby.
Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to roll now, and then they start rolling. And then a lot of times the re-injuries and stuff like that happen. Yeah. So what I did was I put myself on a program of like, I'm going to start off with drilling. I'm going to roll like, after a few weeks, I'm going to start rolling like a couple of rounds, and then it would progressively move on from there. And so again, I took, you know, over 12 weeks to get back to just starting to roll, And so again, what I would tell you to do is, one, consult with a guy like Eugene, like a physical therapist or something like that, and then have a program set out for you, or write out one for yourself to where you discipline yourself and add things in incrementally. And then again, listen to your body. There were days where like I planned to do 3 rolls and my knee would feel a little tweak and I would stop. I'm not going to try to push through it. I would just stop in the middle, but I still do that to this day. If I feel a pinch in my knee, I just back off. And so with what you're going to be doing with that ACL, hopefully a repair or that healing process or whatever it is, I don't know, you're going to be going through this feeling out process of testing your limits again and feeling out like, what do I have? What works? And feeling at that whole situation. So again, it's up to you, but what I would say do is just being willing to listen to your body and not trying to come back into the gym like you've lost time or you've fallen behind or any of that nonsense, and allow yourself to get back over the course of, say, 6 to maybe 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think with ACLs,
after you're cleared,
yeah, it's a different animal too. Like I think that a lot of physical therapists, unfortunately, do not understand what jiu-jitsu is and the requirements of jiu-jitsu, and they'll say, oh, you're good to go back, but really your body has not done anything jiu-jitsu kind of specific. So I think finding a physical therapist that understands jiu-jitsu, or at least wrestling, or has some kind of sports background, is really, really important. You got to be able to do some solo things. Like I said, just getting in the positions that jiu-jitsu is going to put you in, squatting, kneeling, different types of movements, and then play around. Like Chewy said, you got to kind of test and retest and see if maybe one side feels better than the other, playing off your right side or your left side, whatever it is, closed guard, or maybe playing from top, whatever that is. I think you have to kind of, adjust that way. But I don't know. Everybody's so different on their symptoms. Depends on if you have any kind of deficits, but definitely give yourself a time and a graded approach coming back. Don't just jump back, and don't say, I had a good day, I'm just going to push it, to the limit 100%, because you can get in trouble there. And a lot of times with the research, at least 9 months, but really a year or longer coming back to jiu-jitsu. You should be off for probably about a year, like you shouldn't be competing at least for 9 months to a year. But I think a year or longer is better, just because the research shows the risk of re-injury is less. And the highest risk of injury is a previous injury. So that's basically it. So just be mindful.
Quick things. Well, you can tell what is he going to get?
We're going to do balm. Yeah.
Okay.
So for Brett, we're going to do some balm. So send me, like I said, Chewjitsu Podcast on Instagram, or the Chewjitsu Podcast at gmail.com.
So a couple quick things. These won't be for questions, just a couple things that popped up. Someone said, I have no battle buddy. Ask someone. Like, everybody in the gym's trying to get better. Like, it's I was talking to Jess about this, how since we live in this digital world, it's like people don't talk as much as they used to. I remember it used to be a very normal experience to go into some place and you just talk to random people. Nowadays, I feel like I bond more with old people, because like old people still talk like to random strangers, especially in the South and stuff. Like we'll just randomly talk to each other. And so again, you're in your gym, there are people there that would love to have a drilling partner, or again, try to talk to people a little bit more after class. Don't just get up and leave. Stick around, linger around for a little bit and talk to people. So because again, if you develop a friendship there, you're going to be more likely to stick around and you'll get a battle buddy. So again, just an idea. And then there was one more. Someone, it looks like, was asking about books. And I'm working on a video for the YouTube channel, because someone was like,
your favorite book or something.
I mean, it's always like favorite books, but I can't go through favorites. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you guys in my office at the house, and I'll show you just some books. I'm just going to show you the stuff that I read, and I'll go through my bookshelves and my Kindle and my audiobooks, and you can just look through them and see what you guys might get from them. Or I might start I was thinking about putting it up on
book club.
Well, maybe a book club, but I share books on my email list.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about putting together basically these are my favorite books.
Your list.
A list of favorite books. Like I think Amazon has a thing like that, or whatever. Yeah. But here's a list of all my favorite books. Check them out.
Let me ask you this. So let's see if you do you have a book maybe you recommend for people to read in the new year, maybe a book to reread or read in the new year, something like that. So we're still kind of starting out the new year.
It's hard to say. One of the ones I read pretty much every year is The War of Art.
Okay.
And again, I just like the book from Stephen Pressfield. Which was funny. One year I went through and read, I didn't realize he was a fiction writer. I read The War of Art. I loved it. And then it's a very short read. You can read it in like a day, couple days if you're a slow reader. But then I realized he wrote fiction. I read Gates of Fire, and he has a bunch of other like sort of like historical story-based fiction of like wars and stuff. Great books. He's a fantastic writer, so I really like his stuff. But again, War of Art's a really good one to read, because essentially what he talks about, the biggest idea that I think you could sort of take away from it, is the idea of resistance, right? No matter what you do, anytime you try to do something that you want to change yourself, or you're trying to do something for you or improve yourself, you're going to run into resistance.
100%.
And it's just like, you can't explain what happens. It's like the universe starts conspiring against you. I remember when I first started trying to do the videos for YouTube, this was just a clear example. I remember I'd go in and I would put my camera up and I would begin to try to do some of these things. And all of a sudden it was like every possible thing that could go wrong. All of a sudden people are knocking on the door, or people are coming in, or the battery dies on the microphone. I mean, it's like, it would literally be a battle every single time. But again, it's like, I think I heard someone quote the idea of fear, like fear or, resistance is kind of like it's like a wall that's really tall, it's really wide, but it's paper thin. And like, all you got to do is drive through. And so resistance melts away pretty quick, but you got to recognize that it's there. And so like a lot of times when I face a difficulty with anything that I'm doing, especially if it's me just trying to get started, it's like, oh yeah, this is resistance. I had to expect this. And that's a good one. And then another good one that's always, it's a fun read. You can read it in like a day or so, is The Alchemist.
Yeah.
I don't read it every year, but it's like, I've read it a few times. It's a fun read. It's very easy read. And it's a fun one to just kind of go through. But the War of Art's a good one, especially like in the new year when you're trying to do something new. You're trying to become somebody new. You're trying to start this process off. You got to be ready for the resistance, because the shit's not going to be smooth.
That's right.
You're going to run into problems. So,
and everyone, tries habits. So if you're like trying to start new habits, I think Atomic Habits with James Clear is a great one. I enjoyed that one. I've read that too.
Yeah. If you read that book, Atomic Habits, don't read it like a book. Like read it like an instruction,
like a guide. Yeah.
Read it like, because like a lot of people just like they read a book and they just pass along the pages. Like get in the margins, paraphrase that stuff, like make tabs, tear out pages, like use that. That's a book that's meant to be used. And then you take one idea from it and you put it into practice.
Right.
Like don't try to like read the whole thing and then just one thing.
Yep.
It's like a technique. Like don't try to watch the whole instructional. Just find one technique and then you begin to work on that thing, put it into practice and practice it.
All right, Chew. This is I think this is a good one.
All right.
This is a good one. I like this
one. And you guys can throw out your questions. We got 50 of you guys in here. So if you have questions, throw them out. We still have a few things to give away.
Yep. I like this one from Magic Maxons. It says, my 8-year-old daughter has done 4 tournaments all by her choice, but she still gets so anxious and upset before each match. Any tips on helping a child with pre-tournament jitters? I think this goes for everybody gets jitters. I think I get jitters. I get nervous before tournaments. I think most people do.
Everybody does.
Obviously for a kid, it's kind of like, it could be a little different. But I've gotten, I don't know. Like, I just like, and this is hard to do, but you got to make it fun. Make it a fun thing. Tournaments need to be fun, especially for kids, 8-year-old kids. I have a son who's 8 and like, he hasn't competed, but like, if he was going to compete, I just want him to have fun, have something to do, have a game plan, a little bit of a game plan, but just like, it's not a big freaking deal. Don't make it a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big deal or the idea is that, you're going to have these emotions. You're going to have these feelings. There's no way to circumvent those. You can try there's an idea of anxiety reappraisal. I don't know that an 8-year-old would get this, but the idea is that basically when you talk to like Olympic level athletes, very high level performers, when you hear them talk about it, they don't say anxious, they say excited. And the idea is that our body doesn't differentiate like stress from a perceived threatening event to a real threatening event. So you're getting into a situation that she's going to be fine. She's going to go compete at a tournament. She's basically rolling like she does in the gym, just in front of people. But she's not being chewed up by a saber-toothed tiger, right? Which is our DNA is wired for that, right? So our fight or flight sense is going off. But the idea is that if you can interpret this as a positive feeling, that this isn't anxiety, this is you getting excited. Like this is your body getting ready for it. A perception change. Yeah. Because that's how a lot of times they talk to high-level performers. That's how they see it. When they feel that feeling of anxiety that's coming up, it's not a bad thing. And I would tell you that for me, I've had moments where when I first started fighting in MMA, when I went back to do jiu-jitsu tournaments, I had tournaments where I had no jitters. I had none. Because in my mind, I'm thinking they're not going to knee me in the mouth. They're not going to kick me in the face. So whatever, this is jiu-jitsu. And then I went in there and I got smoked because I didn't have the nervousness. I wasn't on edge. I didn't have that pre-match anxiety or that excitement that you should have if you're going to perform your best. Because if you learn how to like embrace it, it will make you better. A lot of times I perform much better in competitions than I do in the gym. So you could basically tell her that, right? You could say, listen, you know, this is what the best people, everyone feels it. You know, we all feel it. Everyone does. But this is a good thing. It's your body getting ready for this. It's not a bad thing. I think a lot of times people feel they start to look at their emotions as a negative thing, right? They feel something that they don't like and they perceive it as negative, but it's not a negative thing. And then the other side of it is that, again, like anything else, it takes practice. It would be nice to simply flip a switch and it be over with and, hey, this is whatever, and now you don't have to worry about it, but it doesn't work that way, right? Everything takes practice. Everything takes reps. And it's why when someone becomes a good competitor, we value it. And so I think that part of it is you as a father, right? You have your daughter that's competing. The best you can't do anything for her specifically other than being supportive. When she gets off the mat, hey, good job, kid. Win or lose, you're there for her. You might help her look at her once you get back home later on. You might study what you guys did wrong and fix it so that she can be successful, because it's fine. It doesn't have to be ultra serious, but at the end of the day, we want her to be successful, right? And then at the same time, that's really all you can do is be supportive. And again, I think that what that does is that would take away any of the negative feelings, because I've had students whom their parents were very negative if they lost, to the point where if they lost the match, they wouldn't get like an Xbox, or they could even incur like physical, like disciplinary type stuff.
You've had that as a coach? You've seen that?
Not me, but I found out about it later. One of my competitors, he used to, as an adult, he used to get violently sick before every competition.
Wow.
And I was like, what is going on? Like, because I mean, the smallest little smidget of food he'd throw up. Like, why is he throwing up? And I remember talking to him one day, and he knew what was going on. It was his body had this anxiety because he would go out there and, you know, he's thinking about his dad, who was like really angry with him. And so he wasn't fighting just to this competitor. He was fighting so he didn't go home and have all this negative stuff happen.
Wow.
And so I think the thing that you could do, the best thing you could do for your kid is be supportive in any way possible, right? And basically just be there for them. And that's all you can do. They have to deal with this themselves. And you as a parent, they are their own person. You can simply help facilitate them in their growth, right? And I think that's the best thing, which I think is probably what you're doing already. But, you know, support them as they get used to these pre-match jitters, and then, you know, assure them that this is okay. It's okay to have these feelings. Everybody has these feelings. Even the best competitors, they have these feelings. You're supposed to, right? And that's okay.
Yeah. You know, you look at some competitors and they look just like they're ready to go. That's super tuned in.
But they look that way.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, it's the appearance. And I think just focusing on, like you said, the main thing is that these are normal. This is okay. This is normal feelings. And that's okay.
Well, it's like there's pictures of guys like, you know, I'm a history geek, right? There's pictures of men right before they went over the top in World War I, right? Like these battles like Passchendaele and, you know, what was the other one?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, there's a few gnarly ones, right? Where you're losing like 40,000 people or 70,000.
Yeah, they're knowing they're going to probably get killed.
And you look at these pictures and they're stone cold. Their faces are stone cold, but inside it's like that's not what's going on.
It's terror,
right? You've got a mix of emotions. And I remember back in the day, I was the same way. I remember one of the guys, I was getting ready to fight, and one of the guys that was on our team, he came up to me, and I'm just sitting in the back waiting. And I'm just dead cold. And I remember him saying, man, I wish I could be as relaxed as you. And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, I'm not relaxed. I'm on edge. And I remember one of our other students, Randy, he's a great dude, but Randy, he's just like,
Randy is always chill.
He's
like,
super chill.
So chill all the time. And I don't know if that's the case or not, but man,
all the time.
Really.
And even backstage, like we'd be backstage right before his MMA fights. And
I love that guy.
I remember one time I asked him, because I'm looking at him and he's just so relaxed, so calm looking. I mean, he's always calm, but even more so.
Yes.
There's no like getting up, woo, let's go. Nothing. And I looked at him and said, Randy, how you feeling right now, brother? He said, well, I'm pretty nervous for real. You know, I mean, so he's going through all these emotions, but again, you won't see it. And so a lot of times, but of course you can't do that. You're getting ready to compete. You can't go out to the fight and go, oh man, I'm super nervous. You have to give off this appearance, right? So every stone cold, mean looking face competitor that you see, there's a mix going on inside of them. I think what happens is, though, over time, you begin to embrace the feelings. Like I remember years ago, one of my first pro fight. I remember sort of having that switch flip. I was getting ready for the fight. There's this big crowd at the casino. You know, they've got the lights on, we're outside. And I remember having that feeling in my gut, just that sort of like nervousness. And it became like an old friend. Like, oh, there you are, you're back, right? And it makes you kind of feel alive for a moment, because when do you feel this? Like as you get older, you don't feel those nervousness feelings as much, right? But then you get in this moment, you get to feel that excitement, this moment where like time seems to drag on and slow down, and you're in the moment. Nothing else matters other than what you're getting ready to do, right? You don't care about the bills you got to pay. You don't care about, the color of the car that you're trying to buy. You don't care about anything. All you're focused on is that. And that's a beautiful thing for a moment. And if you can learn to kind of embrace it and just be with it, it's okay. But again, that takes practice, and maybe not ready for an 8-year-old for that level of like thoughtfulness. But again, be there to support her. And what are we going to hook him up with?
We're going to do some CBD, either tincture or a balm. Just let us know.
If for some reason, if you're not in the US and or wherever you're living, if CBD is illegal, then just let us know. We can send you something else. But if you're good for CBD, just send us an email.
That's right. And then let's do this one. This is a good one. You know, I think a gym is super important, support of a gym and feeling like a community of a gym. So I think this one from John E. And John E writes or asks, I want to bond to my gym. Been going for about 7 months. Still feel like an outsider. Barely live roll because I get smashed so hard with no feeling of success. So there's a lot of ways to take this. I'm sure we're not, and there's, I'm sure there's a lot here. So Chewy, what you got?
Want to bond with my gym. So I don't know why you wouldn't be able to bond with your gym. So I think about like when I was a young guy going into my gym, I wanted to bond. One of the things I've talked about in videos is that I think one of the big reasons why I enjoy training so much is because it's a place where I feel like I belong. I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I remember in the wrestling room, you had this big mixture of guys getting together, beating the crap out of each other, and you felt very comfortable with each other. You felt very connected. And when wrestling was over, I felt a lack of that connection. Going into jiu-jitsu, I remember that connection was there. And again, it's a connection I do not have with anybody in any other facet of my life, right? And when I used to work in the corporate world, it was like felt very empty, the relationships there compared to the relationships I have with some of my close training partners. So I don't think the bonding thing is very complicated. I think that, a lot of times we can overcomplicate it, overthink it. Just be there, be around. A lot of times groups, and you're probably in a gym that's filled with mostly guys, right? Training. It's generally pretty easy to bond and be a part of the group. Really, it just comes to you either being there and being around and training. That's it. That's usually the stipulation. There's really no other qualifying requirements, right? And so I would just say that when you're at your gym, if you want to bond with people, like linger around, get there a little bit early and, BS with the guys before class. When the class is over, don't just get up and leave. And I mean, unless you have to because of work or something, but hang around for a little bit, talk with them, because a lot of times that's when you really get to bond with the guys. Because when you're training, you got a job to do. We're working, we're doing this, right? But a lot of times it's those, like the Eugene was talking about our Saturday sessions with our old group. We bonded over those post-training chats. We were just talking for 10 to 15 minutes afterwards before we got our day started on a Saturday morning. And then I think a lot of times at my gym, our morning crew, I mean, we'll all get there for about 10 minutes, whatever before, and we'll be chatting with each other and we'll be just talking a bunch and getting to know each other, BSing and that sort of thing. And we bond in that way. So I think it's very easy. And as far as like the rolling and getting smashed and having no feelings of success, again, everybody matures in jiu-jitsu at a different rate, right? People get better at a different rate. They start getting the upper hand on people at a different rate. This is your payment. right? This is what you got to pay. We value, when someone gets good at jiu-jitsu, it is valuable. It means something because we know that it was difficult, right? Here's your difficulty. Here you go. Like this is what you signed up for. It's not necessarily always going to be fun, but it was like this for everybody else. I spent the first 6 months getting smashed by everybody, right? Like, I mean, I would come in every day and just get murdered. I remember my little, and this is sort of a side thing I'll go to in a second. My measure of success was basically I would look up at the clock, and if I lasted for like a minute without getting submitted, like that was a win. And then I would push it up. And so the other thing that I would sort of tell you, and this kind of leads into the thing I'll leave you with, is a lot of times if you're not feeling like you're successful, you probably need to measure other things. So for instance, you may be measuring whether or not you're submitting people as a success, right? But you could look at it as, well, I lasted longer, or I got smashed on the bottom of mount, but they didn't submit me today. Or, I got the person off balance for a moment. I didn't finish the sweep, but I got him off balance for a moment. He had to post out. That was an almost, right? That was something. And so you can start looking for smaller things. We have to do this in business a lot of times where, like, let's say if you're looking for like a big metric, like some big thing that moved the needle forward. Well, maybe you didn't hit that, but are there other things that you could measure that would measure some sort of success in some other areas? So you can think about it that way for your training. Maybe don't look at it from the big, did I submit everybody? Did I smash everybody? You could look at it from, did I last a little bit longer today? Did I get submitted less than I did yesterday? That kind of thing. You can look for the little small wins, and that makes it a little bit easier early on.
I've got an idea that I think this is going to scratch both itches here, your training partner and yours as well. I think if somebody submits you or gets the better of you, you can say, hey, we've talked about this. What did you do there? How did you do that? Or what could I do different? You're kind of giving them some validation that they, did something, obviously that they submitted you or won the round, whatever that is. But like, ask them, hey, what'd you do there? Or like, could you show me some way that I could maybe, defend this? And most people will feel good about that, and they'll be happy to share that information. You can kind of create some bonds that way, because you're acknowledging they're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. And you're also asking like, hey, how can I do better? How can, and they'll be, most of your training partners at your gym are going to be very much willing to help you. Yep. Very much willing to give you some advice. So I think that's something to, I think it's a great way to address it in that way. And I think like Chewy said, you got to compare different things. You can't really compare yourself to other people. Kind of just look at your own progress, what you're doing.
Well, I'm not even talking about the comparing thing. I'm talking about like, you got to make your mission a little bit smaller. So for instance, like even me, if I'm adding a new technique to my jiu-jitsu game, I don't go in there and expect me to hit the technique. Like, for instance, like when I was working on some of this really slow old man half guard passing, my first goal was just get to the position where I had the underhook and chest to chest position. I wasn't even worried about if I got the pass. I'm just seeing if I can get there first. And so again, you have to make things smaller. You can't expect to just get the big win. You have to break down into little chunks. Let's give this guy, I'll send you a Chewjitsu t-shirt. So
John E.
So get a hold of Eugene, send him an email, John E, and we will send you a Jiu-Jitsu t-shirt.
Just send me the size, and then you can do it on Instagram or on the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast at gmail.com.
That's it.
Awesome. All right. I'll maybe give a little something out, a little mobility thing or something. What you got, you got anybody?
Let me take a look here. I was looking at you.
There's actually one down here about coaching and not wanting to compete, or not having desire to compete, but wanting to be a coach.
Okay.
Want to do that?
Yeah, let's see if you find it.
This is from Illuminous. It says, I'm a blue belt that has trained for 5 years. I have not competed, not once, with 50 around the corner. I have no ambition to do so. Is that okay if your future ambition is to coach or teach?
Yeah, I've gotten this a bunch recently where people want to coach. But they don't want to compete. And that's okay. You don't have to be a competitor to be a good coach. The thing that competing does is it's a great test to your game, right? It really gives you some insights that are very hard to get, but you can still be a very effective coach and not be a competitor. In fact, we were talking to Sean Applegate recently on the podcast, and his whole thing is that he, used to be focused on competitions, and now he's pulling back because he wants to focus on being a coach.
Yes.
Right. And so again, you don't have to be. Jiu-jitsu is just one of these things where everybody that back in the day was a sort of the warrior coach, right? They were the competitor and they were the coach at the same time. And so we expected everybody to be, but you don't have to be. I think the big thing would be to, especially at a blue belt level, you could probably ask your coach for like to be an assistant. You can say, hey, coach, could I help you out with some of the beginner classes or whatever? Because again, really what you're going to want to do is get reps, right? Who knows how, like where the coaching thing goes. You may never be a fantastic coach. You may never be a high level coach. Who knows? We don't know. But if you want to get started with it, you got to get your reps in. There is definitely a skill. It's a skill that I take for granted now of being able to very simply, and to me, this is the best way. Like sometimes jiu-jitsu guys, like they drive me nuts where it's like they want to flex their lexicon about doing a technique. Granted, I can start to break out words like we're not going to make something better. We're going to ameliorate it, right? We can do this, right? But like we want to keep it simple. One of the beautiful things about teaching kids as a coach is you learn how to make things super simple so that you can deliver them in digestible chunks to anyone. And so for me, this is my thought process to you here, brother. Just ask your coach and say, hey, could I begin helping you coach? Could I help you as an assistant coach? Could I be your uke? Could I, just ask them for an opportunity. They may say no, but at least they know that you're down the road. You might be interested. And that's important because, again, what you want to start doing is getting your reps in as a coach as soon as possible so you can start developing that skill, because your ability to break information down into a digestible chunk on the fly. Because you really think what we're doing as coaches, we're doing a movement. Meanwhile, we're telling other people how to do this movement, and we have to describe it in a way that's going to be sort of easy for them to understand.
Yeah.
And I forget that that's not as easy as it looks, because I can do it in my sleep. I can literally talk anyone through anything that I'm doing as I'm doing it. It doesn't matter if I'm picking up a cup or I'm putting a person in an arm bar. But that takes time to develop. And I remember the beginning, I struggled a lot with that. And so I would say that you could ask your coach, hey, could I help you coach? And then begin there and just start with that and see what happens, and then let it grow from there. And I think that's a really simple way to start. And I think most of you guys, if at some point you want to coach, regardless of whether you want to be a competitor or just a coach, it's good to get started as early as possible and let the coach know. Most of the time we need help here and there. And even if we don't have a place for you right now, if we know that you want to coach, we can keep that in our minds for later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like you said, Chewy, you have to start coaching. You have to practice what you're doing. I think that's one of the main things.
Yeah. Because
that's how you get better at it.
Right. Just like competing, you're going to have to get reps competing. Yeah. If you want to be a good coach, you got to coach.
Yeah, and just study as well, in the back end, try to study, try to learn techniques, watch videos, try to break things down,
sure.
Take notes, of course, but that's part of it. The other process is doing and actually the act of doing it and showing it to people.
I mean, if you're going to be a good coach, you got to be obsessed about this stuff. And by obsessed, I mean, you got to study, you got to go watch instructionals, watch videos and just really break things down so you have something to give.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Again, if you're getting into as a coaching spot because you think it looks cool and because you have an ego thing about it, that you don't want to do that because you're going to be a crappy coach. But if you have a desire to want to make people better and you really like breaking things down for people, then it can be a very cool thing for you. And again, you just need to make sure that you're filling up your cup, so to speak, your jiu-jitsu cup, and get that sucker full so you have something to dish out to other people.
Sounds good. Luminosis. I will give you a little warm-up, a little jiu-jitsu warm-up from the old Jiu-Jitsu therapist archives.
Well, that'll be cool. So for you, you said 50 is getting around the corner. So mobility and stretching and all that stuff is going to be super important for you. Eugene has a routine that would be very good for you. And you should check it out now that you're going to have access to it. So send him an email.
Yep. All right, Chew. Got a couple more in us. We got a few more.
Yeah, I got a few more.
We'll do maybe 2 or 3 more. What do you think?
Okay, I can answer that.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do this one. This is from Lips 100.
Lips 100. So the question is, how can I expect to evolve my skills when I never make it weekly to class? My gym is it's far and out of my area, but I love the people in it and don't want to leave. How would you guys go about this? So I'm going to assume, Flips, that you do not have any gyms closer to you and that this is the only option that you have and it's really far away and that's what you have to do. Because if there's a gym closer to you, then you should just go train at that gym and you could go to the other gym part-time, right? But assuming that you go to these periodic visits to this faraway gym, and then when you get back home, you don't have a choice. What I would do is I would recruit some friends. go about and find some buddies of yours and say, hey man, you guys interested in training? One of my students, actually, we were just talking earlier today. He does this. What he does, he has some little mats set up at his house. And then he will teach jiu-jitsu to other people. And he's like just teaching what he knows so that he can try to learn it better. And in turn, he actually remembers a good deal of it, and he's able to continue growing his skills because, by teaching someone else, he's teaching himself, right? And so what I would maybe sort of lean you towards is going out and getting some mats for your house or whatever, they're not very expensive. They've got like little cheap mats you can just roll around on, and then recruit some friends. And then you can practice the stuff that you learn at that other gym. And you could potentially then say, hey, like, let's augment this with maybe instructionals or YouTube or whatever it might be. Take those techniques and then try to teach them to these people you're training with. I think that would be a really simple way to do it. And then, again, yeah, you're not the expert, but if there's nobody else around doing it, then at least you're doing something there. And that would be a way for you to evolve your skills. I mean, you can look at that's like how a lot of the old Brazilians and stuff, and a lot of the Americans, that's how we had to do it back in the day. We would have these periodic visits with very high level people. And then in the off chance or the off time, we would just have to study whatever we could. Now you guys have instructionals and things like that that are so available, which is great. You just need some bodies. So I would get some friends to join in with you. And I guarantee you could probably get a couple. And for you, Flips, I'll send you an instructional. So,
ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because then you can practice some of the stuff in it, right? So, I'll send you an instructional. Send Eugene a message, and then to the email address or to the Instagram for the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, and then I'll send you over something.
Meanwhile,
we'll
support our sponsor. Give them a shout out for our sponsors, right?
Before the
end. And guys, yes, I do want to say thank you to Epic Roll, BJJ, and Charlotte's Web for supporting us.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for supporting us as well. We really appreciate you all being here. It means a lot. Okay, we got a little smelly geek question over here.
Schmerry geek.
Chewy, where can they reach out to you if they want to ask about seminars, and like somebody's asking about pricing? I don't know if that goes, but just maybe where they can reach out to you.
So if you send me a message on Instagram, or if you send me an email, I will
Jiu-Jitsu.
What's that? My email?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not gonna put my email in here. They can go find it,
okay.
or you can send me an Instagram message. Or if you go to my website at jiujitsu.net. You can sign up to my email list and then reply back to that, and I will get back to you. I don't want to put my email into a thing where some bot might pick it up, and then all of a sudden I start getting blasted with stupid stuff. But after that, I will then send you a list, or I'll send you, not a list, but I'll send you my wife's email that we do seminars with. We may have some. We're getting close to being done for the year. So,
with your seminars,
yeah. So
because of the
we've got the
tournaments.
We've got the Jiu-Jitsu Open tournament. So you guys, if you've seen that, I've got a Jiu-Jitsu Open tournament going up, mostly on the Midwest and some of the North and the East Coast. And then we're also going to have a seminar after every one of those tournaments. The next day we're going to have a seminar, but also we've got a lot of seminars lined up too. I've got two.
We got other seminars.
Well, we've got 2 camps coming into the gym, and then I've got another Costa Rica one. And then I've got some
Lord have mercy. Look at you. Yeah. And the jiu-jitsu camps are a lot of fun. We have like a lot of the same people come in. The ones at the gym, and the jiu-jitsu camps in Costa Rica are awesome. I went last year. It was a great time.
So, and if you guys want to come to my gym and do one of those jiu-jitsu camps, they're a blast. We should have some spots available, and I'm going to be posting up about those probably in the next week or two. So keep your eyes peeled for those.
They're a lot of fun. We get to roll, and like I've made some friends from those as well. Just kind of the same people coming in. Like they've been, we've done it 2 years or 3 years.
We've been doing it since 2021.
Yeah. So like 3 years. It's been cool, man. You just meet some of the same people, some new people. Everybody's super cool. They get to know each other, train a couple times a day, and then hang out. It's pretty fun. All right. So what about, this is a motivation question.
Motivation.
All
right. Let's do motivation.
This is from Mixed Perfection. And they say, so I got my mom to start jiu-jitsu. She has done it for a year. Random tip, or done it for a year. Any random tips to get people to stay motivated? I have a similar situation. Not my mom. My wife got into it. She's been a little inconsistent. So I think there's some ways. I'll tell you this. If you're someone that lives in close proximity to your mom, if you have any mats, jiu-jitsu space, drill together, move around together. My wife, who is a little bit inconsistent at the moment, we'll get some drilling in, and I think she gets some benefit from that. So drilling together, just keep some of those movements fresh and just at least get them on the mats if they're not making it in as much. But I think motivation kind of starts and then it kind of fizzles out pretty quick. So you got to find, everybody's got to find their reason for wanting to train,
Yeah, it's different. So it's like, you can either say, I mean, because there's different thoughts on this, right? You can say that, oh, you need to just be more disciplined or something. I'm of the idea that what you would be best served by is finding things that you actually genuinely want, right? So again, I don't, if your mom really likes it, then again, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, like, you're going to have those down days and bad days, but if you enjoy it, then you'll go to the gym because it's a good experience overall, right? You enjoy being there. So you'll, drum up the energy to go because you get a reward afterwards because you feel so good from training. And because I think about, like, a lot of times, I mean, I'm not going to have to call anyone out or anything, but a lot of times I've heard black belts, I'll go to seminars or something and I'll hear these black belts, talk about how much discipline it takes to get the black belt, and I can't help but think, like, it doesn't really, like, because you think about, like, jiu-jitsu, we just like doing it. Like, I like training. Like, it's not that hard. Like, it's difficult. It's difficult. Yes. Are there days where I get smashed? I'm like breathing heavy because I'm rolling with the 20-year-olds. Yes, that happens. Are there days back in the day when I was getting frustrated because I was getting smashed? Of course there was. But I always enjoyed going to the gym. It's like going into the weight room. I like lifting weights. I go in there. Some days I'm strong. Some days I feel like weak. But I like being in there. That's the place that I want to be. Like you don't have to convince me to go into a place where I'm going to learn something. I'm going to be around friends, have a good group. I'm going to have some great exercise. And afterwards, I had a great experience. I don't have to get motivated for that. That's fun.
Yeah.
And eventually it becomes such a routine that, like, I don't have to think anymore. It's just so much of a habit. So again, I would never tell someone you need to make them train. If they don't want to train, they shouldn't train. But if your mother's struggling with motivation, maybe what you could do is you could ask her what she's struggling with. Like, what kind of problems are you having, Mom? And maybe you could assist her in, fixing those problems. Maybe she feels like she's struggling with a certain position, or maybe she's struggling with some sort of understanding of something. Maybe you could help her out with that. But a lot of times, if someone's like, oh, I just don't want to train, but what can I do to stay motivated? I think that's when you need to say, do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
And if you don't, it is okay. Jiu-jitsu is not for everyone. It's for a lot of us, but it's not for everyone. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should find something that you really like, that you get excited about doing, that you want to do, because again, life's too short to do things that you don't want to do. If you can help it. So, that would be my thought for your mom. If you send us a message and I'll send you a t-shirt.
Cool. All right, I got it written down. Let's do maybe one more. What do you want to do? 1, 2 more?
We can do 2 more.
All right, let's do 2 more, Chewy. There was a good one, and this one's someone, I don't know if they've asked this question before. That's not a bad one. I don't know if there's one from Johnny. He's already asked something before, but I thought it was a good one. And then this one, what do you think about that one right there?
Let's see.
So this one is from Artosh's Kocharian. It says, what to focus on when switching from gi to no gi as a blue belt? Is there any ideas?
Gi to no gi. I mean, really, it's not that complicated. I think that a lot of times people make it out to be, but at the same time, you're just doing jiu-jitsu. If your game is really dependent upon things like lapels and grips, then you'll have to give those up, and you'll have to find if there's a no-gi equivalent to it, or if you just have to change the position that you're playing. Like, if you're playing lapel guard, well, then you're not going to be playing lapel guard anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas, let's say if you're going for a cut through and you use the lapel, then use an underhook. If you're doing takedowns and you use a collar grip, use a collar tie. There's usually equivalents. The biggest thing, and this is something that I faced several times, where I kind of had it the opposite way. I came from wrestling, and I always felt more just at home in no-gi. And then when I would go, I remember very early on where, or not early on, when I was a blue belt, I was getting ready for an MMA fight. I had taken the gi off for months to get ready for that fight. And then when I put the damn thing back on, I was so frustrated with it. And this would always happen because I would take the gi off for a while before my MMA fights and I would put it back on. One of my gis, I got so mad at the gi. I was so stupid. I after one of my fights, I took the gi off, or before the fight, I took the gi off, put the gi back on. And I was rolling with my black belt coach, and he had great grips. And I just felt like I couldn't the gi. I felt like it was the gi was too baggy. Anything. So I took the gi out and I left it on it was on the dry line outside to hang dry. And I remember I didn't even bring it in. I just looked at it. Every time I would walk past it, I would look at it and snarl. Stupid gi. And I left it out there for 2 months. Because I was pissed at the gi because it had really baggy grips. And then eventually I decided I was going to bring this gi in, which it was a beautiful navy blue Keiko Hasa gi. And then I pulled it off the thing and there was holes where the birds had pecked in it. And I ended up eventually finding a bird's nest that had pieces of the gi in it.
Oh my gosh.
And so again, stupid me, right? This is why the YouTube channel works. It's not because like I'm so insightful. I just have a lot of stupid things that I've done. But the big thing is that when you go over to it, really, again, it goes back to this idea of being prepared for the negative feelings that are going to be associated. The pace is going to be a little bit faster. You're going to be like having to change your grips up. And so you're probably going to be not as effective as you were before. It doesn't last that long. You'll adapt pretty quickly because you're already doing jiu-jitsu, but be ready for that. And don't let it get to you. A lot of times when people make the transition from one to the other, it's not going to be completely seamless. You have to expect that and be okay with it. Very simple idea, right? And just be ready for it. So this way, as you're making that transition and you're getting up to speed with your no-gi, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You expect this. You knew this was going to happen, right? You knew you were going to like struggle with the speed. You knew you were going to struggle with the lack of grips. No problem. And then from there, really think about making your gi game and then make it to where it's seamless to your no-gi. This is something that I do. I don't play really any gi specific stuff. The reason being is because I like being able to do both. And I've won plenty of gi tournaments. I've won plenty of no-gi tournaments. Being able to do this back and forth is important to me. And I was fighting, so it was always important to me to have a game that was transferable. I don't have the most sporty jiu-jitsu game because I was always from a fighting standpoint and I wanted to be able to convert it over. And so what I would say do is do the no-gi rolling, enjoy that, get used to it. And then at the same time, when you're doing your gi days, make sure that you're asking questions to yourself. How would this work if it was no-gi? And if you cannot find a way because you're playing like some crazy lapel squirrel guard or whatever, just scratch that. Go play a different position. Play something that's a lot more simpler that requires less grips. So this way it can be more easily transferable. So there's not as big of a gap when you go from one to the other.
I agree. I'm more of a gi guy. Probably I started training the gi. I didn't have really a wrestling background, so I've done more gi. I feel more comfortable in the gi. It's kind of used to feel more comfortable in no gi. But I think like Chewy, the perfect point is try to find positions that are or techniques that are interchangeable. You know, instead of a cross collar grip, maybe a head control, some type of collar tie grip. Overhooks, underhooks are super important. 2-on-1, wrist control, those type of things. And some, in the gi we take it for granted because we can just hook the sleeve and control the sleeve, but just 2-on-1 control, getting a little better at that. I just think there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun techniques in the no-gi that you can do, in the old no-gi. Just playing with legs and getting underneath people and I just think that you can do it. You just have to spend some time. And if you're trying to make a better transition, like Chewy said, make sure that your gi game and your no-gi game starts to be a little bit more in sync together. And there's not such variation like you're doing some kind of crazy, squid guard or whatever it is. Or is that what that's called?
That's what I was thinking. Squid guard. I wasn't thinking. I was saying squirrel guard.
Squid.
Brother. How do you say it? Error what?
Let me look. Artashis Kocharian.
Figured Eugene might know. He might have a better idea.
I like to, you're
Russian.
Familiar with some names. I don't know if that's
Russian, I don't think it's Russian, but it looks very not like Anglo-Saxon, European, American. Yeah. So,
I would say
my tongue is
I would say it sounds like Armenian or something.
Maybe.
I don't know, but who knows?
Okay. But anyway, send us a message and I'll send you an instructional.
All right.
And then we got one from Brittany Ecker.
All right, Brittany Ecker. Brittany
Eckers down towards the bottom.
All right, I'm going there. I'm a going. Chewy. Did I miss
Right
it?
there.
Brittany Ecker. This one right here.
Yep.
All right, there it is.
She asks, how can I get better if I'm the smallest person rolling? Everyone's bigger and stronger than me, and I'm usually the only female. It feels like the men are trying to prove a point. So that would be weird. So again, anybody that trains jiu-jitsu understands that there is a big difference between males and females, right? Men and women. There's a big difference between us. You can just roll with each other. Now, don't get me wrong. I've rolled with some tough ass women before that can beat the brakes off of a guy, but just generally speaking, there's a big difference between us. And I think that if you're going to be like a smaller woman in the gym, you definitely have to be in a gym that is supportive of that, right? Because if you're rolling with a 200 and like, let's say you're rolling with like, if you're like, I don't know what you weigh, let's say 120 or 110 pounds. If you're rolling with some dude that's like 270, right? You could be technically superior, but if he starts to go like crazy hard, spazzy, whatever, it's going to be a bad time for you, right? So again, usually the way that we play in my gym, and this is all I can say, I can't direct it otherwise, is again we do this with anybody, even like if it was a small dude. I'm going to give them a little bit of give and take, right? So for instance, if I go with whether it's a 110-pound woman or even like some of my 130-pound dudes who are still tough, but they're 130 pounds, right? And I'm 210 pounds right now. I'm not going to give them the full business as far as squeeze and power and everything else, because the roll, one, I don't want to risk them getting injured, but two, the roll's not very fun.
Yeah. What benefit do you get from it? You know what I mean? From smashing them?
Nothing. Yeah. It's like, it just slows down and like, okay, well, they're squashed. Great. But I don't even enjoy it. It's not a fun roll for me. There's no engagement. And I roll all the time with our like ladies. Like we have one of our black belts, and she's super tough. I love engaging legs with her, and I love like letting her trying to basically playing around at a speed or a pace where I'm trying to move like her. I'm trying to move at her pace. Wears me out. Like I'll have my heart rate monitor on, and like we'll be going, and I'm in the 150s. Right. It's a good heart. That's a good rate for me. Yeah. Right. Like if I'm going with like one of like the other really tough black belts and we're battling, it's like 170. But again, it's a good pace for me. So I can get a lot out of it. And so I think you have to find good training partners that understand that, that they understand that you can get a lot from a roll that's not a maximum intensity roll. So again, if you're in a place where you feel like you're at risk, right? Like you said, they're proving a point, like you feel like they're like just destroying you, ripping stuff, then you got to be careful around, guys like that. And you could be selective with your training partners, or you could check out other gyms that might be in your area. Now, the other side to that is, and this is basically for all small people, right? Every body type has its advantages and disadvantages, right? And again, I think we all understand this, that the idea that technique overcomes all strength, which is what the myth that was sort of sold to us about jiu-jitsu. It's a myth. It's not true, right? There are times where like, if you roll with an athlete, if you roll with someone that belongs on like an NFL field or something, you're going to understand just it's different, right?
Yeah.
Technique is incredibly important. Technique can conquer a lot of things, but when you have these giant like physical disparities, it can be very difficult to, counteract those. That said, smaller people can learn how to counter a lot of things and overcome a lot of size differences, but it's a very tough road in the beginning. It has a lot of benefits later on, but it can be very tough in the beginning. And the last little nugget that I'll share for you. So again, keep going on that part. There's no other way to do it. You got to keep training, and you've got to push through this, because that's the way that this works, right? This is it's like a create a character mode. It's like your character, your attributes mean that you have a rougher road in the beginning because of how tough it's going to be being smaller. But typically as you get better, you start to get better much faster, and your technical ability is going to be way better because of the fact that you don't have the ability to muscle through things. The last thing that I would say, and this is what I tell most people that are either, if you're the only woman in your gym or if you're like the only small person, be the beacon for other people to follow, right? When people are going to come in, they're going to look around, and if they don't see someone there that looks like them or sort of seems like them, they're going to leave. But if a woman comes in and says, oh, look, it's one of me, it's another woman, let me go train with her, right? Or if they come in and there's like another small person, hey, it's one of me. Like, again, you can be that beacon for people. So what happens is, right, you're going through this rough road, but let's say in about a year or two, all of a sudden you're getting pretty decent, whatever. And then a smaller woman comes in. And then all of a sudden you can bring her in, you can get her up to speed. And then another one might come in. And then before you know it, you have a little crew that you can sort of bring up. And I've seen it happen in our gym with women. And I've seen it happen in our gym with smaller guys where like, one of my students, Justin, who's like a multiple time, pan and world champ, right? Tough competitor. And a lot of the smaller guys kind of flock to him because he's a badass and he's small.
Yeah.
And then we have bigger guys and the bigger guys flock to them. And because again, it's like, hey, you kind of look and are shaped like me. So I'm going to follow you. So again, you got to keep training. Make sure you're training at a good gym, and then continue on and be the beacon for other people to come into and be attracted to when they come in. And I'll send you an instructional. So send us an email and we'll go from there. And then Eugene, why don't we do another one of your warm-up runs?
What's that?
We'll do another one and we'll do one for a warm-up routine.
A little warm-up routine? Okay, cool. Let me see what we got. One more question. We'll look at one more question, Chewy. Let's see.
By the way, someone asked about a stinky gi. Talk to your coach. Like I've had people come up to me and say, hey, so-and-so stinks. It is what it is. This way the coach can have a conversation with them.
This is a good one. We'll end with this. It's from Black Patriot 1776.
Black Patriot 1776.
Hey guys, I'm a fairly new white belt. I'm constantly on the bottom doing defensive things. How can I go from being on bottom to attacking more instead of ending up there by accident? You can attack from bottom.
Well, you can attack from, but let's just talk about like going, let's just say defensive. Let's not say talk about bottom, just defensive versus offensive.
All right.
So,
man, as a fairly new white belt, I think that's just kind of par for the course. I think you got to go through that. I think you got to go through that fire. Got to go through it.
So you have to get okay with like the long time perspective, right? You came into jiu-jitsu, this isn't going to be like a short-term thing. It's not going to be like, man, like 3 months into it, I'm smashing everybody. This is going to be a long time thing. And then we're all guilty of it, right? Where we get into it and then sorry, I didn't know where your question was, but again, talk to your coach and they can help take care of the stinky person. I've had to do it multiple times, like tell people to wash their gi. One time we had a guy where I had multiple complaints. I end up going up to him, and as soon as I got anywhere close to him, I could smell his gi. I was like, oh my God, this is rancid. I asked him, I said, hey, Mike, when was the last time you washed your gi? And he looked up to the ceiling and was thinking, I stopped him. I said, go home, wash your gi. That it's foul. And if you can't tell me when the last time, it should have been yesterday because you trained yesterday. If you didn't wash your gi every single time, like, again, don't be dirty. Also, I had to have a conversation with the guys the other day on the mat. I had to have a little PSA. If you guys like smoke like weed or whatever, like just don't do it in the car and hotbox yourself. Like people like me who don't smoke, the smell is just gross. Like I don't like it. Like if you smoke cigarettes, if you smoke weed, it can
be intense. Yeah.
It can be super intense. Now, again, I don't care what you do in your off time. You can smoke weed all you want to. Just like don't come in reeking of it. It's just as bad as someone comes in who doesn't put deodorant on. It smells terrible. I mean, again, if you don't do it, it's stinky. So anyway, going back to Black Patriot here. So you knew this was going to take a while, right? This is all you got to have that long time perspective. You knew this was going to take a while. So you got to be okay with that. You got to remind yourself of like what the mission is, right? You knew this was going to take a bit. And so again, just like a lot of people, like I was talking earlier, you've got to change the way that you're looking at success, right? So you're thinking of, okay, I need to be offensive because that's going to mean success, right? But again, you first have to go through this defensive phase. You first have to go through this I'm not getting submitted phase. That's what everybody goes through. That's what I went through. The way early on that when I was rolling was basically not getting smashed by people. And the way that I judged my success was whether or not I lasted for a little bit longer than I did yesterday. That was it. And so you're going through that phase. It's what you have to go through. There's no way to circumvent that. And so I think if you understand that that's what's going on, you can then look for those little small wins as far as how's your defense going. Are you lasting a little bit longer? The blue belt submitted you 6 times yesterday, but now you only got submitted twice to, hey, you're improving, whatever. And then what'll happen is the longer that you can stay alive, so to speak, the longer that you can stay in good positions, the more often that you'll be able to actually attack. And one of the little things that I would tell you was really useful to me early on with my guard. So, when we're trying to learn how to play off the bottom, the full guard is kind of the quintessential position early on for us to play from. What I would do is I would make my objective to open the guard and go for an attack. And if it didn't work, I would very quickly relock the guard up. and being able to open and close was kind of almost, you could compare it to tiptoeing your feet in the water a little bit before you jump in, right?
Good idea.
Just tiptoeing in. Just I'm opening, I'm getting used to opening and closing. It seems very simple, but that was really useful to me because, again, a lot of times I would be a nervous to really go for an attack. And again, you have to be able to go for those attacks when they present themselves. But if I knew I could just always lock my guard back up, then that was good. And then along with that, just see how long you can keep the person inside of your closed guard and not let them pass. You know, because if you can keep them for a long time, they're in a good position for you to attack, and that'll give you some more opportunities. And then once you're in those positions, that's when once you can reliably hold a guard or a half guard or whatever, that's when you can start like researching sweeps and researching like submissions, things like that to actually take offensive to them. But going back to it, it starts with this. This is the beginning, brother. So welcome, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing, like holding a position, like you said, and breaking their posture and keeping, maybe not letting them set up their escapes. If you're on bottom, not letting them set up their hand position, keep fighting, getting the positions you need. I think it just comes with time. I think you have to go through it. Everybody does.
Yeah, it's it. It's the perspective, the long time perspective. So, some of you guys are still talking about like edibles.
Yeah.
Edibles is a whole different can of worms, right?
That's a commitment, baby.
Yeah. You're like, hey, we're going to be here for a couple hours. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, for you guys talking about that, you just want to make sure that you are, make yourself smell good.
Yeah, you're gonna be in close proximity to others. So just
people appreciate people that like take care of their hygiene. And again, the smelly ghee thing's important because, again, you want to make sure. I posted that video. I don't know if you guys saw it, where I was talking about this, where my wife was in this Facebook group, and this martial arts people, they were talking about never washing their belts.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's the craziest thing ever. I'm like, this is disgusting. Wash your damn belts. That's disgusting. You're spreading funk. It's not no good.
I don't want to lose all my skills, Chewy. They're gonna wash away.
That's right.
That's right.
So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. Black Patriot, I will
I'm sending them a little mobility routine.
Yep.
We'll warm up. Let's sign out.
So guys, these are the formalities. You know how it works. We've got sponsors that help make this thing happen, and they're the ones that are going to be sending you some free stuff. So appreciate that for that. If you guys want to check out Charlotte's Web, they are the premier CBD company that me and Eugene both use. I like their stuff. If you've never tried out their stuff, try it out for a month, see what you think. If you've never done CBD before, you can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off. They've got everything from gummies, balms, tinctures, the whole deal. And again, I think it's great. If recovery is something that you're interested in, I think it's a good product to try. It's a good supplement to throw into the mix. You may find that you have a lot of good benefits from it. You may not. It's up to you. But again, I think it's a great tool for me as far as recovery goes, which the older you get, I think the more important that becomes. You can check them out again, charlottesweb.com, epicrollbjj.com. If you've ever watched any of the YouTube videos here, and I've got it's like triangle or kimura shirts, just different t-shirts. Or if you ever look at my gear that I have, the Jiu-Jitsu gear, it's made by Epic Roll. Epic Roll is the people that I go to. So again, Matt donated some stuff to give away today. And again, if you want to check out his website, he's got gis, rash guards, shorts, hoodies, the whole thing. epicrollbjj.com is the website. Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, the link is there, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. When you join up for inexpensive price, you'll have access to a library of content we've created over the last several years, which has everything from warm-up routines and narrated roles to guest podcasts with us that we have not released anywhere else. And you have access to the library upon joining. And then last, guys, but not least, if you're not a member of the Chew Crew, if you don't have access to it, you don't get my daily email that I send out, head on over to jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN, and join up, and I will send you 2 free ebooks. One is on developing your own jiu-jitsu game plan. The other one is for developing strategies to break through training plateaus. And then I will send you a email once a day, usually sometimes once like Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends. But again, has different ideas that I share with you, and I send exclusive offers for basic things that I have. And you get better deals in the Chew Crew than you would if you just follow me on Instagram or whatever. So if you guys want to get access to that, that's the website to go to, jiujitsu.net/join. And then that's it, guys. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Hope you're enjoying your Friday, and we'll talk to you guys next time.